My plan to divorce my cheating husband came to a screeching halt the moment the husband of his mistress showed up at my door. He offered me $150 million with one bizarre condition: postpone the divorce for 3 months. What was the real plan behind this insane offer? Before the story begins, let me know in the comments where you're all tuning in from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can continue to grow and bring you even more compelling stories. The rain in New York this afternoon seemed to understand the state of my heart. It fell in a torrential downpour, creating a gray curtain that obscured the view of the Midtown Manhattan skyline. I stood motionless before the massive plate glass window of our 30th floor penthouse. I watched the streets below, already choked with rush hour traffic. The vehicle lights blurred on the wet asphalt, creating a bleak, abstract painting. Normally, at this hour, I'd be busy in the kitchen, preparing a special dinner for Mark, my husband. I always made sure everything was perfect, from the cleanliness of our home and the calming scent of aromatherapy to his favorite meal. I, Eleanor Vance, daughter of a respected family from the Upper East Side, had dedicated my entire life, my education, and my potential solely to being a devoted wife to Mark Peterson. But this evening was different. There was no aroma of cooking, no soft jazz music that I usually played. There was only the rumble of thunder, occasionally clashing with the painful thud of my own heart. In my hand, Mark's smartphone felt cold. The sleek device had been left on the nightstand when he rushed out this morning. I shouldn't have opened it. I should have trusted his cliché excuses about a sudden meeting or a business trip out of state. But the notification that popped up on the lock screen destroyed everything. "Chloe, hey babe, thanks for the transfer for my shopping spree earlier. You still coming to my place tonight? I miss you so much. Don't forget to tell that stupid wife of yours you're working late." The message was short, but its destructive power was greater than an atomic bomb to my 5-year marriage. Stupid wife. Those words echoed in my head, spinning like a broken record. So this was how they saw me. Mark, the man whose status I had elevated, whom my father had introduced to important business colleagues until he could become someone, apparently thought I was stupid. My hand trembled as I unlocked the phone screen. Coincidentally, I knew the password. Our anniversary. How ironic. Inside, I discovered another world Mark had hidden. Intimate photos of them in the Bahamas when Mark had claimed to be at a business conference. Vulgar texts that made my stomach churn. And the most painful part, proof of massive money transfers to this woman named Chloe. Meanwhile, just last week, Mark had told me his business needed a capital injection and asked me to cut back on spending. "The nerve," I whispered, my voice caught in my throat. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled, streaming down my cheeks. They felt hot, burning my skin. I threw the phone onto the expensive Italian leather sofa. I didn't need to see any more. The evidence was more than enough. My dignity as a woman, as a wife, and as a Vance had been trampled. I walked toward the master bedroom, my steps heavy. I pulled a large suitcase from the closet. Tonight, the moment Mark came home, I would throw the divorce papers in his face. I would leave. I didn't care if I had to return to my parents' home on the Upper East Side with the status of a divorcee. It was better to live simply than to live in a luxurious lie. However, my thoughts drifted to my parents' situation. My father's business had been in a steep decline. Our family's historic brownstone, my grandfather's legacy, was facing foreclosure. All this time, I had hoped Mark's success could help restore our family's fortunes, but it turned out he was squandering his money on that homewrecker. The sound of the apartment doorbell rang, shattering my thoughts. I flinched. Was Mark home early, realizing he'd forgotten his phone? Rage instantly flared in my chest. Good. The sooner he was back, the sooner I could throw him out of my life. With wide strides and ragged breaths, I walked to the front door. I didn't even bother to wipe the tear stains from my face. Let him see. Let him know how broken I was. I swung the door open forcefully. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your fa." My words died in my throat. The person standing at the door was not Mark. Before me stood a tall man, perhaps in his early 30s. He wore a suit that looked incredibly expensive, but it was now soaked through from the rain. Water dripped from the ends of his jet black hair onto the shoulders of his sharp suit. His face was handsome, with a strong jaw and a straight nose, but his expression was as cold as ice. His eyes bore into me, sharp as if they could scan my very soul in seconds. An aura of power emanated strongly from him, making me instinctively take a step back. Eleanor Vance. His voice was deep, resonant, and full of intimidation. It wasn't a question, but a statement. I swallowed hard, trying to gather what little courage I had left. Yes, that's me. Who are you? If you're looking for my husband, he's not home. The man didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me. Then his gaze dropped to my still trembling hands, then shifted back to my swollen eyes. The corner of his lip lifted slightly, forming a thin, cynical smile. I know your husband isn't home. He's currently at the Hermes boutique on Madison Avenue, buying a handbag for my wife, he said flatly. My heart stopped for a beat. What? I'm Julian Croft, he said succinctly, as if the name alone explained everything. And it did. Who didn't know Julian Croft, the owner of Croft Enterprises, the young magnate whose face frequently graced the covers of business magazines as one of the wealthiest men in America? He was the definition of old money, born rich, powerful, and intensely private. But wait, what had he just said? Your wife. Chloe, I murmured, realizing the horrifying connection. Chloe is your wife. Julian nodded slowly. He didn't look angry, nor did he look sad. His face was as blank as a concrete wall. May I come in? We have business to discuss. And this isn't a conversation to be had in a doorway. I hesitated for a moment. Letting a strange man into the apartment when my husband wasn't home was improper. But considering what I had just learned about Mark, those social norms felt irrelevant. Besides, this man was a victim too, just like me. Please, I said finally, opening the door wider. Julian stepped inside, his scent washed over me as he passed a mixture of rain, expensive tobacco, and a masculine, woody cologne. He didn't seem impressed by our apartment's interior, which I had once considered quite luxurious. For someone like Julian Croft, this place was probably no better than a storage unit. He stood in the middle of the living room, declining when I offered him a seat. His eyes swept across the room, then landed squarely on Mark's phone lying on the sofa. You know everything, don't you? He said without looking at me. I just found out, I answered bitterly. His phone was left behind. Julian turned to face me. A flash of lightning outside illuminated half his face, making him look even more mysterious. What's your plan now? Cry, rage, file for divorce? That's none of your business, I retorted sharply. But yes, I'm divorcing him tonight. I refuse to live with a traitor. Don't! Julian cut in quickly. I furrowed my brow, confused. Excuse me? Who are you to tell me what to do? Julian stepped closer to me. The distance between us was now only a few feet. I could see the raindrops still clinging to his eyelashes. Don't divorce him tonight. Don't cause a scene. Don't let him know that you know, he said, his tone one of absolute command. You're insane, I laughed, a hollow sound. Your wife and my husband are having an affair, destroying our marriages, and you're asking me to stay silent? I am not some foolish woman who will tolerate being cheated on. I'm not asking you to accept the affair, Julian said calmly, a stark contrast to my emotional outburst. I'm offering you a deal. What kind of deal? True revenge, Julian replied, his eyes glinting dangerously. A divorce will only set them free. Mark will be free to be with Chloe, and you'll be left with the status of a divorcee and a broken heart. Is that fair? I fell silent. His words struck a nerve deep inside me. Come with me now, Julian commanded. We'll talk somewhere more suitable. This place has too many traces of that bastard. I can't just leave with a stranger. Eleanor, he cut in, saying my name with a strange familiarity. Your family on the Upper East Side needs money, don't they? Your father has a $2 million debt due next month. If it's not paid, that brownstone will be seized. My blood ran cold. How could he know? My family's financial troubles were a closely guarded secret. How do you know that? I know everything, he answered arrogantly. Come with me, and I'll give you a solution you never imagined. Or stay here, divorce your husband, and watch your family crumble, piece by piece. The choice felt impossible. But looking into Julian's eyes, which were filled with conviction, A glimmer of hope sparked amidst my despair. I glanced at the open suitcase in the bedroom, then back at Julian. "Fine," I said softly. "I'll go." Julian didn't smile. He just gave a curt nod and turned toward the door, as if he knew from the start that I wouldn't be able to refuse him. I grabbed my purse, locked the door to the apartment that now felt like a personal hell, and stepped out, following the stranger's upright back into the elevator, descending into an uncertainty greater than the storm raging outside. The drive from my apartment in Tribeca to the financial district was eerily silent. I sat in the passenger seat of Julian's luxurious black sedan. The car's interior smelled of expensive leather and was completely soundproof, muffling the cacophony of horns and the relentless drumming of New York's rain outside. His private driver navigated the potholed streets with such smoothness it felt like we were floating. Julian sat beside me, engrossed in a tablet. The screen's light reflected on his serious face. He hadn't uttered a single word since we left the apartment lobby. His silence made me increasingly anxious. What was I doing, following a strange man in the middle of the night? But every time I wanted to protest, the image of the texts on Mark's phone and my father's weary face, burdened by debt, haunted me. The car turned into the entrance of one of the tallest skyscrapers in the area. A valet opened the door respectfully, greeting Julian as Mr. Croft. We were escorted to a private elevator that shot us straight to the top floor. My ears popped slightly from the change in air pressure. The elevator doors opened to reveal an exclusive, ultra-private lounge. The room was dimly lit, illuminated only by the soft glow of crystal chandeliers and the city lights of New York filtering through the surrounding glass walls. The atmosphere here was a stark contrast to the chaos in my heart, calm, cold, and sophisticated. Julian led me to a private room in the corner. Its walls were made of thick glass, offering a panoramic view of the city's lights, which looked like rivers of gold flowing below. The rain streaking down the glass added a melancholic touch. "Sit," Julian gestured to a plush velvet sofa in a deep maroon color across from him. I sat down stiffly, clutching my handbag. A waiter appeared, brought 2 drinks, and then left silently, leaving us alone in the tense silence. The room's air conditioning felt piercingly cold. Or maybe it was just me, trembling with fear. Julian took a small sip of his drink and placed the glass on the black marble table that separated us. He looked at me directly, his gaze sharp and intimidating. "Let's get straight to the point," he said, his baritone calm. He reached into his inner suit pocket, pulling out a checkbook and a gold pen. He wrote something quickly, tore out the check, and placed it in front of me. "Take it," he commanded. I looked at the piece of paper hesitantly. Slowly, I reached out and picked it up. My eyes widened as I saw the string of zeros. I had to count them twice to make sure I wasn't mistaken. $150 million. My hand trembled so violently that the check fell back onto the table. What is this for?" I asked, my voice choked. "That's your price. Or more accurately, the price of your time," Julian replied flatly, as if that amount of money was mere pocket change to him. "That money is enough to pay off all your family's debts, buy back any assets they've mortgaged, and secure a comfortable life for you and your parents for 7 generations. I swallowed, trying to process this insane situation. "What do you want from me? I'm not a prostitute." Julian let out a small laugh, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I have no interest in your body, Eleanor. What I need is your status as Mark Peterson's wife." He leaned back into the sofa, folding his arms across his chest. "As I said, Chloe is my wife. Our marriage is purely on paper, a business alliance between the Croft family and hers, who are also influential. But she violated our agreement by having a public affair and embarrassing my name, and your husband, that ambitious but reckless fool, is her partner. Then why don't you just divorce Chloe? Why involve me?" I demanded. "Because in business, timing is everything. I am in the middle of a massive acquisition that involves Chloe's family. If I divorce her now, or if this cheating scandal explodes, my company's stock will become volatile and the acquisition could fail. The losses would be far greater than the number on that check." Julian leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. "I need 3 months. 3 months to finalize my business dealings and move my assets to protect them from the divorce settlement. During those 3 months, I need things to be quiet. No scandals, no divorces. I was beginning to understand, though it felt surreal. So, your task is simple, Julian continued. Don't divorce your husband yet. Go back home. Act as if nothing happened. Be the sweet, obedient, and foolish wife they think you are. Let them feel safe in their affair. Close your eyes, cover your ears. You're telling me to live under the same roof with the man who betrayed me and pretend to be happy? That's torture, I exclaimed emotionally. It's strategy, Julian corrected coolly. You think crying and filing for divorce now will make you a winner? No. Mark will gladly divorce you. Then he'll twist the narrative to make you look like an incompetent wife. You'll walk out of that house with nothing but your shattered pride. He pointed to the check on the table. But with this money, and with your patience for 3 months, you can destroy him at his most vulnerable moment. When he feels like he's on top of the world, when he thinks he has it all, we bring him down. Together. I fell silent, staring at the check again. $150 million. An amount that could save my father from a heart attack over his debts. An amount that could restore the honor of the Vance family name. 3 months? I asked softly. 3 months. 90 days, Julian affirmed. After that, this money is entirely yours, and you are free to divorce him. I'll even help you hire the best lawyers to ensure Mark is left with nothing. My mind raced. My emotional side screamed in protest. I wanted to spit in Mark's face right now. But my rational side, the side of a businessman's daughter that I had suppressed for so long, began to see the logic in Julian's plan. This wasn't just about money, it was about taking control. If I divorced Mark now, he'd likely be happy to be with Chloe. But if I waited, if I let Julian orchestrate everything, Mark's downfall would be absolute. I looked at Julian, searching for any doubt in his eyes, but I found only cold, steely determination. This man was dangerous, very dangerous, and now he was inviting me to be his ally. How can I be sure this check will clear? I asked, trying to be realistic. You can cash it tomorrow morning. It's a cashier's check, he answered casually. Consider it a down payment. Trust is expensive, Eleanor, and I'm willing to pay a high price for it. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cold air of the room. The image of Mark's fake smile, Chloe's text, and my father's aging face flashed before me. The pain in my chest slowly morphed into something else, something colder and harder. Vengeance. With a now steady hand, I took the check and put it in my purse. I agree, I said firmly. 3 months. No less, no more. Julian smiled faintly. This time, it seemed a little more genuine. Or perhaps it was just the satisfaction of a successful negotiation. He raised his glass. To a deadly patience, he said. I didn't return his toast. I just looked at him sharply. Remember one thing, Mr. Croft. I'm doing this for my family, not because I'm afraid of you or my husband. So, don't you ever think about betraying me, either. I am a man of my word, Eleanor. You're safe with me, he replied. That night, on the top floor of a New York skyscraper, under a relentless downpour, I signed a contract with a devil in disguise. I sold my patience for $150 million and prepared to play the greatest role of my life. Mark Peterson, enjoy your final moments of happiness, because the real storm has just begun. The morning sun in New York shone brightly, as if mocking the remnants of the storm that had raged in my heart the night before. Its heat penetrated the windows of our master bedroom in Tribeca, creating a stuffiness that even the maxed-out air conditioner couldn't fully dispel. I sat on the edge of our king-sized bed, staring at my reflection in the vanity mirror. Dark circles under my eyes were faintly visible despite being covered with expensive concealer. This was day 1 of the 90 days of hell that Julian Croft had promised. The roar of a sports car engine echoed from the garage. It was Mark. My husband was home. My heart pounded, not from longing or love, but from a mixture of disgust and anger that I had to suppress with all my might. I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and pictured Julian's cold face and the $150 million check now safely stored in my private bank vault. That was my mantra now. The bedroom door opened slowly. Mark walked in, his face haggard, wearing the same shirt from yesterday morning. The faint, cloying scent of an unfamiliar woman's cheap perfume wafted from him, mixed with the smell of sweat and last night's alcohol. "Honey, you're awake?" he asked, his tone artificially cheerful. He approached, intending to kiss my cheek. On reflex, I tilted my head slightly, pretending to adjust my earrings, so his lips only brushed my hair. "Hi, Mark. You're home late. I was worried last night. You didn't answer your phone." Mark laughed nervously. He took off his watch and placed it on the vanity with a stiff movement. "Yeah, sorry about that, babe. The storm was crazy last night, right? My phone died and I left my charger at the office. With the gridlock traffic and flooding everywhere, I had to stay at Dave's apartment. It was too dangerous to try and force my way home." Lies. Dave was on a cruise in the Caribbean with his wife. I'd seen his wife's Instagram posts 2 days ago. But I just smiled. The fakest smile I had ever produced in my life. "Oh, I see. I'm just glad you're safe." "I was just worried something had happened to you," I said softly. I felt like I was going to vomit uttering those words of concern to the man who had just spent the night in another woman's arms. "You really are the best wife," Mark said, visibly relieved that I didn't press him further. He started unbuttoning his shirt. "I'm going to take a shower. I feel so grimy. I have another meeting with investors this afternoon, so I'll probably be home late again." "Okay, Mark. Don't work too hard," I replied. As soon as the bathroom door closed and the sound of running water began, my smile vanished. My body trembled with suppressed nausea. I glanced at his dirty shirt lying on the floor. There was a faint pink lipstick stain on the collar, the same shade Chloe often wore in her Instagram photos. I immediately grabbed my secret phone, a new one Julian had given me last night, along with a prepaid SIM card not registered in my name. I typed a short message. "Target just got home. Alibi is staying at a friend's place due to the storm. We'll be going out again this afternoon." A reply from Julian came in seconds. Short, concise, emotionless. "Let him. Don't ask too many questions. Focus on clearing the funds today. Pay off your family's debts in cash, discreetly. Leave no digital trail Mark can trace." I deleted the message immediately. That afternoon, after making sure Mark had left not for an investor meeting, of course, but likely to return to his mistress, I had my driver take me to a central bank branch. The process of cashing the check went smoothly, thanks to a powerful letter of introduction prepared by Julian. The bank staff treated me like royalty. When my new account balance showed that fantastical number, I felt breathless. This was real. I had truly sold my marriage. From the bank, I went straight to my parents' home on the Upper East Side. The old colonial-style brownstone looked gloomy. The wall paint was peeling in some places, and the small front garden was no longer as well kept as it used to be. In the living room, I found my mother sitting lost in thought, holding her rosary beads. Her face looked tired, far older than her actual age. "Mom," I called softly. She looked up, her eyes misty. "Eleanor, you didn't say you were coming." I sat beside her, holding her wrinkled hand. "What's wrong, Mom? You look sad." My mother sighed heavily. "Your father. The people from the bank came again this morning. They gave us a final warning. If we don't pay the principal next month, they'll seize this house. Your father is in his room now. His blood pressure is up again. I don't know what to do, Eleanor. I don't want to ask Mark for help. I know his business is struggling too, right?" To this day, my parents still thought Mark was a good, hard-working son-in-law. They didn't know he was squandering money on another woman. "Don't worry, Mom," I said firmly, pulling a thick envelope from my purse. Inside wasn't cash, but proof of payment I had just completed an hour ago. I had transferred the funds to a special account to pay off the debt without their knowledge. "What is this?" my mother asked, confused. "Dad's debt is paid off, Mom." "The house is safe," I whispered. My mother stared at the paper, then at me with wide eyes. "Eleanor, where did you get this much money? Was it Mark?" "No, Mom," I cut in quickly. "I didn't want Mark getting credit for this. It's my own savings. An old investment that just matured. Please don't ask for details. The important thing is that you and Dad can rest easy now. And one more thing, please don't tell Mark about this. Let it be our secret. I want to surprise Mark with it when the time is right." My mother burst into tears and hugged me tightly. "Thank you, my child. Thank you. You're our family's savior." My mother's embrace gave me strength. The guilt from accepting Julian's offer eased slightly. At least this dirty money from selling out my husband could save my parents. That night, the charade continued. Mark came home early, carrying a bouquet of roses that I suspected he bought from a street vendor, as they were already wilting. He seemed restless, constantly checking his phone. We ate dinner in an awkward silence, punctuated only by the clinking of our silverware. "Mark," I said, breaking the silence. "Next week is our 5th wedding anniversary. Do you remember?" Mark choked on his drink. He quickly wiped his mouth with a napkin. "Oh, right. Of course I remember, honey. 5 years? Wow, time flies. I was thinking, what if we have a small celebration? Just invite a few close friends," I probed, wanting to see his reaction. Mark's face turned pale. Let's not do that just yet. Business is really hectic right now, honey. I'd feel bad partying when I have so much work. Let's just have a quiet dinner, the two of us. Romantic, right? I knew the real reason. He was afraid Chloe would be angry if she saw posts about our party. Or maybe he already had plans with Chloe for that day. "Oh, okay. If that's what you want, I'll go along with it," I replied with a painfully obedient smile. Suddenly, Mark's phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit up, showing the name Johnson Logistics. But I caught a glimpse of the message before the screen went dark. "Babe, are we still on for checking into our usual hotel tomorrow? I already told my husband I'm going to Boston." My blood boiled. Johnson Logistics. How creative. Mark quickly snatched his phone. "Ugh, another issue with the warehouse. Honey, I need to take this in my study." He left without waiting for my response. I sat alone at the large, cold dining table, staring at the untouched food. My eyes fixed on my husband's retreating back. "Enjoy your lies while you can, Mark, because with every passing second, I'm sharpening the knife Julian gave me to cut your happiness to shreds." 1 month had passed. My life was split into 2 starkly contrasting worlds. By day, I was Eleanor, the dutiful wife who spent her time at home or shopping for groceries. But in between, I entered the world of Julian Croft. Today, Julian had arranged our meeting at a contemporary art gallery in Chelsea. The gallery was owned by one of his cousins and had been closed to the public for the day under the guise of a private curation. It was the perfect venue, quiet, artistic, and far from the prying eyes of Mark or Chloe, who preferred to spend their time at malls or nightclubs. I arrived wearing a simple navy sheath dress and large sunglasses. Julian was already waiting in front of a giant abstract painting dominated by blood-red colors. He stood tall with both hands in the pockets of his gray slacks, looking like a work of art himself, beautiful but untouchable. "You're 5 minutes late," he greeted without turning as he heard the click of my heels. "The traffic on the FDR was insane," I said defensively, standing beside him. "There was a protest. A queen should be able to predict the chaos in her kingdom," he quipped, though his tone wasn't as sharp as our first meeting. He turned to me, his eyes scanning my appearance from head to toe. "You look more alive. Seems $150 million is an effective cure for a dull complexion." "Don't mock me, Julian. What's the agenda today?" I asked impatiently. Julian walked over to a long bench in the middle of the gallery. A tablet and several stacks of documents were laid out on it. "Business 101, he said, sitting down and crossing his legs. "Know your enemy better than he knows himself." He handed me the tablet. The screen displayed the financial data of Mark's company, Peterson Industries. Charts dominated by sharp red downward trends filled the screen. "Your husband isn't just a cheater, Eleanor. He's also a terrible businessman," Julian stated coldly. "Look at this. He forged financial reports to secure bank loans to fund his and Chloe's lifestyle. He's using company assets as personal collateral. Legally, this is embezzlement." My eyes widened as I read the figures. He used the office building and your Tribeca apartment as collateral," Julian added casually. I gasped. "That apartment is in my name. It was an inheritance from my grandmother. He forged your signature 3 months ago. The notary was bribed. Chloe found the notary for him, Julian revealed. That fact hit me like a sledgehammer. Mark was a true bastard. He hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he was actively planning to rob me blind. My hands clenched into fists so tight my knuckles turned white. I'm going to have him arrested. Patience. Julian gently took my hand. The cool touch of his skin surprisingly calmed my explosive anger. If you go to the police now, the process will be long, and Mark could find a way out. We'll use a more elegant method, which is acquisition, Julian replied, his eyes turning predatory. I've been quietly buying up Mark's bank debts through a shell company. In 2 more months, I will be his single largest creditor. When that happens, I'll have the full right to seize all his assets, including the company he's so proud of. And you, Julian looked at me intently, will be the one to press the execution button. A sense of admiration crept into my heart as I witnessed the workings of Julian's mind. He didn't play with emotions. He played the system. He destroyed his opponents without getting his own hands dirty. A stark contrast to the impulsive and emotional Mark. Julian was the calm water that could sweep everything away. I have to go to Napa Valley next week, Julian said suddenly, changing the subject. There's a private resort there I'm considering buying. I need a second opinion on the interior design from a woman's perspective. What does that have to do with me? You're coming with me, he commanded. Consider it a field trip. I'll teach you how to manage real estate assets, so when you reclaim your family's properties, you won't be as foolish as your husband. I can't just go to Napa. Mark will be suspicious, I protested. Next week, Mark will be busy with Chloe, who claims to have a brand endorsement photo shoot in Miami. He'll tell you he has an urgent business trip to Chicago. So you'll have free time, Julian cut in. He really did know everything. Just tell him you're going to a friend's villa in the Hamptons to clear your head or something. He won't care, Eleanor. He'll be glad you're not home, so he can video call Chloe without fear of being caught. Julian's words were harsh, but true. Finally, I nodded. A week later, I landed in Napa. Not as a tourist, but as the secret apprentice of the country's most influential tycoon. A private car took us to a hidden, super luxurious resort perched on a cliff. The place was so private it felt like the outside world didn't exist. During our 2 days there, I saw a different side of Julian Croft. He didn't treat me like a subordinate, but not exactly like a friend either. Our relationship was unique. He taught me how to read property contracts, spot investment potential, and negotiate with local contractors. He was demanding, a perfectionist, and sometimes sharp if I was slow to understand. But he never condescended to me. That afternoon, we were sitting on the villa's terrace overlooking the rolling vineyards. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. A gentle breeze caressed my face, giving me a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in a long time. "You're a quick learner," Julian commented while sipping his espresso. It was the first compliment to ever come out of his mouth. "I graduated summa cum laude with a business degree, Julian. It's just that for the last 5 years, my brain has been dulled by only thinking about Mark's dinner menu," I replied bitterly. Julian looked at me, his gaze softening. A shame. Such potential wasted on a man who can't tell the difference between a diamond and a pebble. My heart fluttered at his words. For the first time, I felt valued not as a wife, but as an individual. Suddenly, a waiter approached with a tray of fruit, but he tripped on a thick rug. The tray flew toward me. "Look out!" In the blink of an eye, Julian moved. He pulled my arm forcefully, shielding me with his body. Fruits and shattered ceramic scattered across the spot where I had been sitting. Julian's hard chest was pressed against my back, his arm wrapped protectively around my shoulders. His masculine, calming scent filled my senses. Time seemed to stop. We remained in that position for a few seconds. I could feel his steady heartbeat against my back, a contrast to my own heart, which was racing wildly. "Are you all right?" he whispered in my ear. His voice was low and husky, sending shivers down my spine. I turned my head slightly, finding our faces just inches apart. I could see the fine pores of his clean-shaven skin and his dark, intense eyes looking at me with genuine concern. It wasn't the cold gaze of a businessman, but the look of a man toward a woman. "I'm fine," I answered nervously. Julian slowly released his embrace, then stood up and straightened his jacket, reverting to his cold demeanor as if nothing had happened. He reprimanded the waiter firmly, but not cruelly, then made sure the area was cleaned up immediately. I was still frozen in my seat, my hand on my chest. In that brief moment, I realized something dangerous. Mark may have broken my heart, but Julian was starting to seep into the cracks without permission. This wasn't part of the contract. This was off script. And what was more frightening, I didn't mind. Our alliance in Napa had opened my eyes. Mark was just a painful past, but Julian Croft, he was a future enigma, terrifying and tempting all at once. I had to be careful. Falling for a business partner on a revenge mission was a fatal mistake. But as I watched Julian's strong back, as he stood at the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley, I knew my heart was starting to betray my logic. The gala was held in the grand ballroom of a 5-star hotel overlooking Central Park. A gigantic crystal chandelier hung majestically from the ceiling, casting a golden glow across the room, filled with the city's elite. Women in couture gowns worth as much as family cars laughed delicately while showing off their diamond jewelry, while men in slick suits discussed stocks and politics, holding champagne flutes. The air was a pungent mix of expensive perfumes, fresh lilies, and the thick stench of hypocrisy. I stood beside Mark, my hand linked through his arm. We were the golden couple of the night. Mark Peterson, the rising young entrepreneur at least, that's what people knew, and Eleanor Vance, the faithful wife from a prominent family who always supported him. No one knew that behind my sweet smile, I was counting down the days to his destruction. "You look stunning tonight, honey," Mark whispered in my ear, but his eyes were scanning the room. I knew who he was looking for. "Thank you, Mark," I replied flatly. It was now the 2nd month of my agreement with Julian. Following his instructions, I had changed my tactics. I was no longer the nagging wife demanding attention. I became cold, calm, and unreachable. I stopped asking what time he came home. I stopped checking his phone in front of him. I stopped getting angry when he canceled our dinner plans. At first, this change made Mark happy. He felt free. He thought I had given up, or had become the docile wife who knew her place. But lately, my tranquility had started to bother him. A man like Mark needs validation. When I was angry or jealous, it fed his ego that he was desired. But when I didn't care, it drove him mad. "Hey, that's Mr. Garrison." Mark suddenly pulled me toward a group of older men smoking cigars. "Let's say hello." "He's a potential investor." I followed, smiling politely, nodding at the right moments, and making the kind of high society small talk my mother had taught me since I was a child. However, out of the corner of my eye, I caught another figure entering the ballroom. Chloe. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from rage. The woman wore a blazing red dress that was so tight it audaciously showcased every curve of her body. She arrived on the arm of an old film producer, a new sugar daddy perhaps, while Julian was unreachable and Mark was with me. Mark saw her too. His body tensed beside me, his grip on my arm tightened. "What is she doing here?" Mark muttered quietly, more to himself. "Who, Mark?" I asked, feigning ignorance, following his gaze. "Oh, is that Chloe, the influencer you've told me so much about?" "Wow. She's much more vulgar in person than in her photos." Mark choked on his own cigar smoke. He looked at me with a strange expression. You know who she is?" "Of course. Who doesn't? She's always going viral," I answered casually, sipping my orange juice. "Why are you sweating so much?" Mark wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "No reason. It's just a bit warm in here." As the night wore on, the real drama began. I saw Chloe stealing glances at us repeatedly, her eyes burning with jealousy. She was furious to see Mark with me in public. When I excused myself to the restroom, I deliberately took my time, reapplying my lipstick in the mirror. When I came out, I saw Mark and Chloe arguing heatedly in a quiet corner of the corridor near an emergency exit. I hid behind a large pillar, eavesdropping. "You promised you'd divorce her last month, Mark," Chloe hissed, her voice strained but full of emotion. "I'm tired of hiding. Julian is acting weirder and weirder. He's blocked all my credit cards. I need some certainty. Just be patient, Chloe." "You think it's easy?" Mark sounded frustrated. Eleanor, she's been strange lately. She's too calm. I'm afraid she's planning something. If I ask for a divorce now, she might demand half of everything, and my company could collapse." "Excuses," Chloe snapped. "Just admit you're still in love with her. If you haven't filed for divorce by next week, I'll leak our video to the gossip sites. Let's see everything burn." Chloe stomped off, leaving a stressed-out Mark running his hands through his hair. I smirked in the darkness. "Good, Chloe. Keep pressuring him. Make him panic even more." When Mark returned to the ballroom, his face was ashen. He immediately came over and grabbed my arm roughly. "We're leaving now." "But the party's not over, Mark. Mr. Garrison wanted to talk more," I protested softly. "To hell with Mr. Garrison. We're leaving," he snapped, loud enough for a few people to turn and look. The silence in the car was suffocating. Mark drove recklessly, occasionally slamming his fist on the steering wheel. "What's wrong with you, Mark?" I asked, my tone bored, not worried. Mark slammed on the brakes, screeching to a halt on a deserted side street. He turned to me, his eyes red and furious. "What's wrong with you, Eleanor? Why are you so quiet? Huh? You used to be suspicious every time I came home late. You always asked who I was with. Now, you don't care. You're like a statue. Are you having an affair? Answer me!" he yelled, unleashing his frustration on me. The accusation was so absurd, I wanted to laugh. How funny. The thief shouting "thief." I looked him straight in the eye, channeling the cold aura I had learned from Julian. "Mark," my voice was low and steady, without a hint of tremor. "Isn't this what you wanted? A wife who doesn't ask questions, a wife who gives you freedom. Now that I've given it to you, you're still angry. What is it that you really want?" Mark was silent. He seemed confused by my non-hysterical reaction. He had expected me to cry or defend myself, but instead, I had cornered him with cold logic. "I just feel like we're growing apart," he mumbled, his voice weakening. "That's just you being tired from work," I said, patting his hand briefly, like a boss calming an employee, not a wife to her husband. "Come on, let's go." "I'm tired." Mark started the car again, but I knew his mind was in turmoil. The pressure from Chloe and my cold demeanor were making him paranoid. He felt like he was losing control of everything, and sure enough, the next day, Julian's mole in Mark's office reported something fatal. Panicked by Chloe's deadline and afraid I would sue for assets in a divorce, Mark made a huge blunder. He transferred $50 million of the company's operational funds to a private offshore account he thought was safe and untraceable, intending to hide the asset from me before the divorce. He didn't know that the safe bank in the Cayman Islands was managed by a firm whose majority shares had just been acquired by Croft Enterprises. That afternoon, I met Julian at his secret apartment. Julian laughed a rare, crisp, and slightly wicked laugh as he read the report. "He just dug his own grave," Julian said, pouring wine into 2 glasses. "Moving company assets to a personal account without a board meeting is a federal crime. And because he did it in a panic, his digital footprint is a complete mess." Julian handed me a glass of wine, his eyes sparkling with victory. "Congratulations, Eleanor. Your husband just handed his neck to the hangman. 1 more month, and we pull the lever." I sipped the dark red liquid. It tasted bitter but left a sweet aftertaste on my tongue, just like the revenge we were brewing. "Mark Peterson, your suspicions were right. There is a storm coming, and I am its center." The sky over New York seemed to be in mourning, or perhaps in a rage. For 3 consecutive days, rain had fallen relentlessly, flooding parts of the city. Major roads turned into murky rivers, traffic snarled everywhere, and the chorus of honking horns became the city's symphony of stress. The chaotic scene outside was a perfect reflection of what was happening inside my marriage. This was the final week, the crucial week before the 90-day deadline ended. The tension in our Tribeca penthouse was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Mark was becoming more and more unraveled. The dark circles under his eyes were more pronounced. He was often lost in thought, and his temper flared over trivial things. His business was starting to falter, thanks to Julian's subtle sabotage, and Chloe was relentlessly demanding a resolution. On the other hand, I had to be extra careful. One small mistake at this final stage could ruin the entire meticulously crafted plan. That night, the rain was torrential, accompanied by strong winds. The power in our building went out completely after a transformer was struck by lightning. The large apartment was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the gloomy flicker of candles. I sat in the living room, pretending to read a magazine by candlelight. Mark paced the room like a caged animal. His phone was glued to his ear as he yelled at his subordinates about a shipment stuck in the flood. "I don't care, find another truck. If that shipment doesn't arrive tomorrow, we lose millions," he barked, then slammed his phone onto the sofa. He turned to me, breathing heavily. "Can you stop reading that trashy magazine? Your husband is losing his mind, and you're just relaxing." "And what am I supposed to do, Mark? Yell along with you?" I replied calmly, not looking up from the page. "Ugh!" Mark ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Suddenly, the sound of a phone vibrating filled the air. It wasn't Mark's phone, nor was it my primary phone, which was on the table. My blood froze. It was my secret phone, the one from Julian, which I had hidden between the sofa cushions. I had forgotten to silence it. "Stupid! Eleanor, you're so stupid." The vibration sounded incredibly loud in the dead silence of the powerless apartment. Bzz, bzz. Mark fell silent. He turned toward the sofa where I was sitting. "What was that sound?" "I didn't hear anything," I answered quickly. My heart felt like it was about to burst from my chest. "Maybe it's the building. That was a phone vibrating, Eleanor. I'm not an idiot." Mark strode toward me, his eyes filled with suspicion. "Your phone is on the table. My phone is here. Whose phone is that?" He started tossing the sofa cushions aside violently. "Mark, stop it. Don't look for trouble." I tried to stop him, but Mark shoved my hand away. "Get out of my way." He lifted the last cushion, and there it lay, the slim black device. Its screen lit up in the darkness, displaying a new message notification. "Julian, final briefing, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Don't be late." The name was displayed clearly. Julian. My world felt like it was collapsing around me. Mark snatched the phone, his hands shaking. His expression shifted from confusion to a terrifying fury. "Julian? Who the hell is Julian?" he screamed in my face. "So this is why you've been so quiet. You're cheating on me? You have a lover?" He grabbed my shoulders, shaking me violently. "Answer me. Who is this bastard? You've been playing me all this time, haven't you?" Fear seized me. A cornered Mark was capable of anything, but at the same time, my disgust peaked. He was accusing me of cheating when he was the ultimate traitor. "Let go of me, Mark. You're hurting me," I yelled, trying to break free. "I'm not letting you go until you confess. Unlock it. I want to see what's inside." He shoved the phone in my face, trying to force me to unlock it. Suddenly, the front door was kicked open with a tremendous crash. Crack! The sound of splintering wood thundered through the room, louder than the lightning outside. We both flinched and turned. Standing in the doorway was a tall, imposing figure, soaking wet, flanked by two burly bodyguards. A flash of lightning from outside silhouetted him, making him look like the angel of death. It was Julian. How could he be here? Had he bugged me and known I was in danger? "Take your hands off her, Peterson." Julian's voice was low but boomed through the room, filled with a deadly authority. Mark gawked, his grip on my shoulders loosening. He looked at Julian, then at me, then back at Julian. You're Julian Croft, from Croft Enterprises." Mark clearly recognized the face of the tycoon he often admired in magazines. The confusion on his face deepened. "What's your business in my home? Why are you sending messages to my wife?" Julian strode in casually, as if he owned the place. His two bodyguards swiftly and efficiently separated Mark from me. Mark was pushed down onto the opposite sofa while Julian stood before me, his sharp eyes scrutinizing me. "You were careless, Eleanor," he whispered, low enough for only me to hear. "Good thing I was tracking your GPS and saw your heart rate spike on the smartwatch I gave you. I knew something was wrong." He then turned to face the still shocked Mark. "Your wife isn't cheating on you, Mark. She works for me," Julian lied, but it sounded utterly convincing. "Works?" Mark gaped. "Doing what at this time of night?" "Acquisition consultant," Julian said dismissively, his tone leaving no room for argument. And about that message, we were discussing a business strategy that involves your company. Your wife is trying to save your failing business, and you repay her with accusations." Mark was silent, his slow brain trying to process the information. His fear of Julian Croft was overriding his jealousy. "Save my company? What do you mean?" Julian smirked, a terrifying smile. "Your company is on the brink of collapse, Peterson. Debts everywhere, cash flow is a disaster. Eleanor begged me to inject some funds. She was willing to work overtime as a go-between for her ungrateful husband." Julian twisted the facts so brilliantly I almost believed him myself. He made Mark feel guilty and small. I didn't know," Mark stammered. He looked at me with guilt in his eyes. "Eleanor, is this true?" Having been trained in this charade for 2 months, I immediately caught Julian's cue. I put on a sad, disappointed expression. "You really thought I could betray you, Mark? I've been so quiet because I was sick with worry, trying to figure out how to help you. I asked Mr. Croft for help secretly so your pride wouldn't be hurt." Mark hung his head, his face flushed with shame. "I'm so sorry, honey. I lost my temper. I've been under so much stress." Julian looked at Mark with disgust. "You don't deserve her. But because Eleanor pleaded, I'll give you a chance. Come to my office tomorrow. We'll discuss the capital injection. Bring all of your company's legal documents." Mark's eyes lit up. He saw this as his salvation. He had no idea he had just been invited to his own execution. "Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. Croft. I'll definitely be there. And one more thing." Julian stepped toward Mark, patting his shoulder gently but with a firm pressure. "Never raise your voice at Eleanor again. If I hear that you've been rough with her, the deal is off." "Yes, sir. I promise." Mark nodded obediently, like a dog being scolded by its master. Julian gave me a look. His eyes said, "Hold on just a little longer. Tomorrow, we finish him." That night, after the power was restored and Julian left, Mark was incredibly sweet to me. He massaged my feet, apologized profusely, and praised me as the best wife in the world. I just smiled faintly, feeling a rising tide of revulsion. He didn't know that tomorrow, at the shareholders' meeting, the person he would meet was not a savior, but an executioner. In the bathroom, I stared at my reflection. My eyes were cold, my face hard. The old Eleanor, the gentle, naive one, was dead. All that was left was a woman ready to watch her husband's world burn to ashes. 3 months were over. It was time to collect. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. The sky over New York, which had been gray for days, was now clear and bright, as if the universe itself approved of what was about to happen. I stood before a large mirror in the hotel suite where the annual shareholders' meeting for Peterson Industries was to be held. Mark had insisted we stay at the hotel the night before so he could be fully prepared. I knew he was just trying to avoid any chance of being late due to his overwhelming nervousness. I wore a black, knee-length sheath dress that hugged my body perfectly. Its cut was simple yet elegant, a design from a local couturier whose price could feed a family for a month. Around my neck was a diamond necklace, not a gift from Mark, but one from Julian, delivered this morning with a small card that read, "To celebrate your freedom." Mark entered the room in his finest suit. His face was tense, but there was a glint of arrogance in his eyes. He felt he was on top of the world. He believed that today, Julian Croft would arrive as a savior, injecting fresh capital, saving his company from bankruptcy, and making him look brilliant in front of the shareholders who had begun to doubt his leadership. "Are you ready, honey?" he asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror next to me. He smiled, a smile I was about to wipe off his face forever. Today is a big day. After Julian signs the investment contract, our stock will skyrocket. Everyone who ever underestimated me will eat their words. I'm ready, Mark. "Perfectly ready," I answered calmly, applying a final coat of dark red lipstick. The color of courage, the color of blood. We walked toward the grand ballroom. The plush hotel corridor carpet muffled our footsteps. Mark held my hand tightly, as if I were his trophy. He didn't know that this trophy was actually a ticking time bomb. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere was already tense. Dozens of shareholders, board members, and a few business associates were seated at neatly arranged round tables. The air conditioning was on full blast, but I could smell the cold sweat and anxiety in the air. Rumors of the company's dire financial state had spread, and today they demanded answers. Mark took the podium with a forced confidence. The spotlight was on him. He began his speech, presenting growth charts that I knew were mostly manipulated data. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark's voice echoed through the speakers, "I know there have been rumors, but I assure you, Peterson Industries is entering a new golden era. Today, I will announce a strategic partnership with a major investor who will take us to the international stage." Murmurs spread through the audience. Some were skeptical, others hopeful. "Who is the investor, mister?" "Peterson? Don't just give us empty promises," shouted a vocal minority shareholder. Mark smiled broadly. "Patience. He is on his way. He is a man you all hold in the highest regard." Just as Mark finished his sentence, the grand double doors of the ballroom swung open slowly. Every head turned. The room fell silent. Julian Croft strode in. The man's presence was overwhelming. He didn't walk. He commanded the space. Following him were 6 lawyers and assistants carrying thick stacks of documents. Julian wore a custom-tailored navy suit that fit his powerful frame perfectly. His face was blank, cold, and intimidating. There was no friendly smile. Mark descended from the podium to greet him with an outstretched hand, like an old friend. "Welcome, Mr. Croft. It's an honor to have you here." Julian did not take Mark's hand. He glanced at it dismissively, then walked right past him toward the podium. Mark froze, his hand hanging in the air. His smile began to fade, replaced by confusion. Julian stood at the podium, taking the microphone. He surveyed the entire room with the eyes of a hawk. "Good morning." His deep, authoritative voice mesmerized the room into silence. "I am Julian Croft, and I am not here as a strategic partner or an investor." My heart pounded. This was it. I sat up straight in my front row seat, holding my breath. "As of 8 a.m. this morning," Julian continued, signaling an assistant to distribute documents to the board members, "Croft Enterprises has officially acquired 85% of Peterson Industries' outstanding debt from its 3 primary lenders. As per the credit agreement clauses signed by Mr. Mark Peterson, the payment defaults over the last 6 months grant the primary creditor the right to convert that debt into equity." An uproar began. Mark's face turned ghost white. "Wait, Mr. Croft, what is this? We had an agreement about a capital injection." Julian ignored him. "Therefore, as of this moment, I am the absolute majority shareholder of this company, and my first decision as the new owner is to completely overhaul the board of directors. This can't be happening." "You set me up!" Mark screamed in panic. He tried to get to the podium, but Julian's 2 bodyguards easily restrained him. "Set you up?" Julian looked at Mark with contempt. "You set yourself up with your own incompetence, Peterson. You falsified financial reports, embezzled operational funds for personal use, and mortgaged assets that weren't yours to begin with." Julian pressed a button on a remote. The large screen behind the podium, which had been displaying Mark's doctored business charts, went black for a second, then displayed a video. It wasn't a business presentation. It was CCTV footage from a luxury hotel room and recordings from a hidden camera inside Mark's car. The image was crystal clear. On the giant screen, Mark and Chloe were shown in various intimate embraces. Their laughter, their conversations about divorcing me, and their insults toward me and Julian were broadcast clearly for everyone to hear. "Eleanor is so stupid. She'll never realize I'm using her money to buy you an apartment, babe," Mark's voice echoed clearly from the video. "So, what about Julian? When are you going to deal with that stiff of a husband?" Chloe's voice chimed in. "Don't worry, Julian is too busy with work. He'll never care. Once my company is big enough, I'll kick Eleanor to the curb, and then we'll get married." The audience gasped. A wave of shock, disgust, and mocking laughter filled the room. The flashes of cameras from reporters invited by whom, I didn't know, began to mercilessly capture Mark's face, now as pale as a corpse. Mark stared at the screen, his eyes bulging. He turned to me. "Eleanor, this is fake. Eleanor, don't believe it." I stood up slowly. All eyes were now on me. I didn't cry. There were no more tears for this man. I walked toward Mark, who stood trembling near the director's table. My steps were steady, the sound of my heels clicking on the marble floor like a death knell for our marriage. "Fake?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp, amplified by the still active microphone at the podium. "I'm the one who planted those cameras, Mark." Mark's eyes widened as if they would pop out of his head. "What?" I opened my purse and took out a thick manila envelope, the envelope I had been preparing for 3 months. 3 months ago, I was going to divorce you the moment I found out about your affair. But I waited, I said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. I waited not because I still loved you, but because I wanted to see just how far you would go to destroy yourself. I threw the envelope at his chest. The papers inside scattered to the floor. "Those are the divorce papers. Sign them," I commanded. "Also in there is the evidence of your embezzlement transfers. Mr. Croft's lawyers already submitted copies to the SEC this morning. So, after this, you won't be going home to our penthouse. You'll be going to a jail cell." Mark collapsed to his knees, his legs giving out from under him. He tried to grab my hand. "Eleanor, please, I'm your husband. Think of my mother. Don't you dare speak her name," I snapped, my composure finally cracking for a moment. "You're the one who almost made my parents lose their home. You're the one who mortgaged my family's legacy for that whore." I took a breath, regaining control. I looked down at him, at the man I once loved, who now looked so pathetic and small. "We're done, Mark. You've lost your wife, your company, and your dignity in a single day. Enjoy it." I turned to look at Julian, who was still standing at the podium. He looked at me, not with an exaggerated smile of victory, but with a small, respectful nod. A nod that said, "You did it." Without waiting any longer, I walked out of the ballroom. Behind me, I heard chaos erupt. Mark's desperate screams, the angry shouts of the shareholders, and the faint, approaching wail of police sirens. I walked out of the hotel lobby and into the hot New York air, which felt incredibly fresh in my lungs. A weight of 1 trillion tons had just been lifted from my shoulders. I was free. Truly, finally free. 1 month later, the morning in New York felt different, perhaps because last night's rain had washed the city's dust away, or perhaps because my heart had finally found its own peace. I sat at a corner table in a small, vintage-style cafe in the West Village, not far from my parents' home. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and toasted bread filled the air, creating a cozy, homey atmosphere. In my hands was the morning paper. The headline on the business page was still about the massive Peterson Industries scandal. Mark's face was plastered there, wearing an orange prison jumpsuit. His legal process moved swiftly, thanks to the comprehensive evidence compiled by Julian's team. Mark was charged with multiple felonies: corporate embezzlement, fraud, and document forgery. Chloe's fate was no less tragic. Without financial support from Mark, and with her status as Julian's wife revoked, Julian had divorced her and sued for damages for violating their prenuptial agreement. Chloe was completely broke. Her social media accounts, once adored, were now flooded with hate from netizens. The last I heard, she was being hounded by debt collectors for a hedonistic lifestyle she could no longer afford. I closed the newspaper and set it on the table. I felt no pity, but also no more burning hatred. All that remained was an immense sense of relief. It was all over. My father's debt was paid, the deed to the brownstone was safe in the family vault, and my parents' health was gradually improving as their worries disappeared. "May I sit here?" A familiar baritone voice made me look up. Julian Croft was standing there. This time, he wasn't wearing a stiff, formal suit. He wore a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows and casual chino pants. His hair wasn't slicked back as usual. A few strands fell across his forehead, making him look 5 years younger and much more human. "Mr. Croft," I greeted with a faint smile. "Or should I call you my savior?" Julian chuckled softly, pulling out the chair opposite me and sitting down. "Just Julian. Our business contract is over, isn't it? No need for formalities." The waitress came and brought Julian his order. A black coffee, no sugar. Of course. "How are you?" he asked after taking a sip, his eyes fixed on me. The intensity of his gaze hadn't diminished since our first meeting in the rain. "Better than I've been in the last 10 years, I answered honestly. "It feels like I can breathe again." "Thank you, Julian. Without you, I would have been destroyed." "You saved yourself, Eleanor," Julian corrected gently. "I just provided the tools. You were the one with the courage to use them. Not many women could withstand the mental pressure you did for 90 days. I stirred my cappuccino, watching the swirl of foam on top. "So, what brings you to a small cafe in the West Village? A man like Julian Croft surely doesn't have the spare time for a casual coffee." Julian leaned back in his chair, gazing out at the tree-lined street. "Actually, I'm looking for a new partner." "Another business partner?" My eyebrows rose. "I'm sorry, I've retired from the world of corporate intrigue. Not for business." Julian looked back at me. This time, his gaze was different, warmer, deeper. "I'm looking for a life partner." My heart skipped a beat. "You know," Julian continued, his voice lowering slightly, "at first, my approach to you was purely a business calculation. You were the perfect pawn to take down Mark and smooth my acquisition. But over those 3 months, watching you control your emotions, seeing your intelligence in Napa, witnessing your fierce protection of your family, I realized something." He extended his hand across the table, his palm open, waiting. "I realized I don't want this partnership to end," he said. "I want to write a new book with you. One without contracts, without timelines, without pretense." I stared at his hand. The hand that had pulled me from the brink of despair. The hand that was cold to the touch but had given me a sense of security I had never felt before. My mind drifted to the small moments over the past 3 months when he shielded me in Napa, when he sent me my favorite food when I was stressed dealing with Mark, when he looked at me with pride at the shareholders' meeting. Behind his cold mask was a sincere heart, long hidden behind walls of power. Was I ready? The trauma of my marriage to Mark was still fresh, but looking at Julian, I didn't see Mark. I saw a man who respected me as an equal, who saw my potential, and who waited patiently for my storm to pass. "That's an interesting offer," I said slowly, trying to hide the smile that was beginning to form on my lips. "But I have a condition." "Name it," Julian replied quickly. "Anything. Stocks, assets, a private island." I laughed softly. "No, the condition is, this time, no more secrets, no more scripts. We take it slow. I need time to fully heal my old wounds." Julian smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, making his face incredibly handsome in the morning light. "I have all the time in the world, Eleanor. I'm a patient businessman. Remember, I waited 3 months just to take down an enemy. I can wait much longer to win the heart of the woman I love." The word love hung in the air, sweet and promising. Slowly, I reached out my hand and placed it in his. He clasped it tightly, warm and strong. "All right, Mr. Partner," I teased. "Let's work on the first draft of this new chapter." Julian laughed and raised his coffee cup. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed, clinking my cup against his. Outside, the sun shone brighter, filtering through the leaves of the trees, creating beautiful patterns of light on our table. New York was still bustling with all its drama, but in this small corner of the West Village, I had found my peace. My story of revenge was over, sealed shut behind the prison doors that held Mark, and now my story of happiness was just beginning.